Welcome to the Voices of Veterinary Medicine podcast. I'm Dr. K, small animal veterinarian and author, bringing you interviews, inspiration, and information from a wide variety of interesting people working within the field of veterinary medicine, so you can learn from their experiences and proactively steer your career to happiness and fulfillment. And before we get started, I'd just like to remind you that for less than the cost of a jar of chicken-flavored crunchy cat treats, you could support the Voices of Veterinary Medicine by going to patreon.com/voicesofvetmed. Or visit my website at www.realize.vet. That's REALIZE.V as in Victor, ET as in Tom. Just click on the podcast tab, and there you will see the link for Patreon. Your support helps pay for server hosting and production, and it tells me you find value in the show and want to see it continue. And I thank you in advance for your consideration of supporting the show, and I'm so glad to have you here. And here's the show. Hello, listeners. Before starting this episode of the Voices of Veterinary Medicine podcast, I want to explain something about this episode. I am interviewing someone who is a financial advisor in addition to being a DVM. We had to be very careful about complying with financial regulations in order to put this episode together. So it's a little more scripted than most of my podcast episodes, and that is because everything that was said needed to go through several rounds of approval. So if you notice a difference and it sounds like it's more of a Q&A than a casual conversation, it's because it is, and that's the reason. This week's guest is a financial advisor with her Doctor of Veterinary Medicine degree, Darby Affeldt. Darby is not a currently practicing veterinarian, so the focus of our talk is going to be predominantly on her personal journey to becoming a veterinarian, what she's done since earning her DVM, and how she got to where she is now. Of course, we'll want to hear her perspectives on finances as they pertain to some of the financial struggles veterinarians face, but please remember that just as a veterinarian can't diagnose or treat a patient without a thorough history, physical exam, and often multiple diagnostic tests, neither can a financial advisor give personal financial advice or create a personal financial plan via a podcast. So with that caveat, I'll get on with the introduction. Darby Affeldt, DVM, is a financial advisor for clients in multiple states. Affeldt works with veterinarians in all career stages, with small to mid-sized practice owners, and with individuals seeking retirement and estate planning guidance. As a formerly practicing doctor of veterinary medicine herself, as well as being married to another DVM who owns a large mixed animal practice, Affeldt understands the industry, its complexities, and the needs of her clients. As a lifelong entrepreneur, she is deeply passionate about helping others succeed. Darby is originally from Colorado and received both her bachelor's and doctorate degrees from Colorado State University. Following her move to Seattle, Darby built both a relief veterinary career and founded and operated a successful construction and development company, building over 100 new homes and one veterinary hospital. Her inspiration to become a financial advisor stems from her own experiences, and she draws upon those experiences to comprehensively integrate debt management, saving, investing, college funding, insurance, and long-term retirement financial plans for her clients. Affeldt's articles are regularly featured in Veterinarian's Money Digest, Veterinary Team Brief, Pulse, and the WSVMA. She also co-authored a book entitled Real Life Financial Planning for Veterinarians. In 2017, Darby was the honored recipient of the WSVMA Allied Industry Partner Award for her contributions to the veterinary industry. She teaches at WSU College of Veterinary Medicine and UGA College of Veterinary Medicine and speaks routinely at symposiums. Outside of work, Affeldt resides in both Seattle and Olympia, Washington. She enjoys cycling, swimming, snow and water skiing, diving, traveling, studying, and spending time with her husband, also a DVM who recently sold his 8-doctor mixed animal practice, and her teenage son. Her daughter attends college in Minneapolis. Darby is a registered representative and investment advisor representative of CRI Securities, LLC, and Securian Financial Services, Inc. Northstar Resource Group offers securities and investments through CRI Securities, LLC, and Securian Financial Services, Inc. Members: FINRA SIPC. CRI Securities LLC is affiliated with Securian Financial Services, Inc. and North Star Resource Group. North Star Resource Group is not affiliated with Securian Financial Services, Inc. North Star Resource Group is independently owned and operated.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to the podcast, Darby, Affeldt, DVM. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you, April. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. It's so good to have you. And we've gone through quite a lot to get to this point. So I am just so excited to be able to offer what you have to offer to the listeners. So let me begin with question number one, which is when and why did you decide to become a veterinarian?
I was very young when I decided to become a DVM, I think 3 or 4 years old. My folks remind me that I dragged home injured squirrels and birds, but I'll never forget the pivotal moment. I found my newt floating dead at the top of the fish tank, and I brought it into the bathroom sink to inspect it closer and squeezed his belly in a Heimlich-like maneuver, and out popped one of the blue decorative tank pebbles. Miraculously, he just sprang to life, and I decided it was a sign.
Oh my God, it's fish CPR.
And of course, I never went into fish medicine, but my commitment never strayed, and I was in such a hurry that I took extra courses to skip 2 years of school, one in high school and one in college, to hurry up and get to vet school. I'm not really sure what the rush was all about.
And what was your vision for yourself in the future as a veterinarian?
You know, originally I wanted to practice zoo medicine, and then I recognized in school how much I loved surgery. And so, however, by the fourth time, and by the time the fourth year rolled around, I was really ready to dive into practice and no longer interested in internship and then residency. So ironically, despite a passionate and lifelong entrepreneurial spirit, I never had aspirations to own a practice. And to this day, I wonder why not. It would have fit me perfectly.
Right. All those roads untraveled and paths not taken. But we are where we are. Well, tell me a bit about your journey to and through veterinary school.
Yeah. Despite my rush to get into vet school, I met someone in college and ended up moving to a ski resort in Montana to take a year off after finishing college early to be with him, work as a professional raft guide, ski, bike race, and apply to vet school at CSU. Like many of us, I found vet school to be grueling, and my outlet was to compete in bike racing and duathlons. And I think as a result, I spent my free time training and not studying, and really never had an interest in large animals. So this made it difficult for me to pass my boards. There were various entrepreneurial endeavors in vet school, a greeting card line I started, a pizza sauce, a radiology device. I guess one could say I was distracted in vet school.
I would like to spend an entire other podcast delving further into this greeting card line and pizza sauce and radiology devices. I wish we had time. All of that, it sounds really fascinating. But, let's stick to the script then. So what did you like and dislike about vet school?
I love the study of veterinary medicine and working in the heart of where the best and brightest minds are. It's incredible to me. I hold an immense amount of respect for those in academia. It was a privilege to study at CSU. And conversely, vet school, at least back then, seemed to be about memorizing the most insane amount of minutia. Maybe it's different these days now that we have computers, but that was my biggest frustration, using up brain space to memorize things which could easily be referenced. And another challenge that existed then, and perhaps even more today, is the lack or inconsistency of the rigorous curriculum for business and financial topics. In general, DVMs are focused on science and medicine and not necessarily business and financial topics. I recognize that it's so very difficult to fit it all in, to navigate the challenges with respect to how to get the right amount of information to students, to understand which students want business or financial education, which don't, and how to convey to all the students that regardless of their future endeavors, that their financial lives will play a humongous role in their happiness.
Yeah, it's really hard to appreciate that when you're in vet school, for sure. And I certainly did not either, because I was just concentrating on memorizing the minutia, like you were saying. It's almost like,
it's a lot.
Yeah, well, vet schools, like they have, I don't know where they have the space to cram more information in, but like also, on the other hand, vet students don't have any more space in their brains to think about these things, unfortunately.
Yeah, and many don't have interest. I remember in vet school thinking, I don't need to know business and financial topics. I'm a vet. And I literally thought that back then.
I did too.
I don't think it's uncommon.
Yeah. Everything will be fine. I'll
worry about that. Medicine.
Yeah. So what were your biggest challenges in vet school?
The veterinary school curriculum and schedule was horrendous. And we didn't have the option back then to track small or large animal. At the time, I found having to study large animal medicine was not a good use of my time. I really wanted to practice on small animal only. Plus, I admittedly am afraid of large animals. I don't understand their personalities, and I'm convinced they'll hurt me. So this is proven to be true. It seems like whenever I ride a horse, they inevitably try to scrape me off their back. As with most things, it's hard to see the reasons at the time, but today I'm glad that I had to study it all. I'm more knowledgeable in general.
And how much student loan debt did you graduate with?
None. I feel badly admitting this, but back in the early 90s, vet school just didn't cost as much as it does today. It has experienced hyperinflated tuition hikes. And plus, I used funds from a custom solar curtain business that I started in high school and a radiology device I co-invented, and including success from some very small investments that my parents made in the company, which ended up hurtling to success. I've always been a saver and an earner, and this is strategies today students could utilize.
Yeah, and I've talked to some people who also came out of vet school without any debt, or who paid theirs off quickly, and they'll say something like, "Oh, I'm embarrassed to admit this," or "I feel bad about admitting this," but that makes me kind of sad. Like, why can't we? I know, we're afraid that people are going to be jealous of our success, but that makes me sad. Like, why can't we be happy for you, Darby?
Yeah.
that you came out of vet school without debt, and happy for those of us who actually are in that position after vet school.
I agree.
Sort of a general aside, but I think it would help everyone in veterinary medicine if we'd be happy for each other, if we happen to be in a good position rather than envious, and in the world in general. That's just my side. I'll get off my soapbox now. So after you graduated, you worked as a full-time small animal veterinarian initially, right?
Yeah, not for long though, only about 6 months. My boss smoked, and he would wander around the hospital with a cigarette dangling from his lips. Plus, he would beat the animals in the back when they were biting or scratching, the kind we would just muzzle or use a towel to handle. It was horrible, April. I hated that job. Meanwhile, I found a fixer-upper house in Seattle. And one day I was looking at it thinking, this is just like surgery. The framing is like bones. The electrical is like the nervous system. The digestive is the plumbing, skin and drywall. I could fix this. So I read books and I went to Home Depot workshops and learned how to fix up homes. We didn't have the internet yet. But fast forward 3 years, that evolved into a very successful building career. And on the side, I was a relief vet.
That is amazing. And I think it's a really good reminder to people that, like, you can earn your DVM. That doesn't mean you have to work as a vet. You can be successful at so many things.
Yes.
So how would you characterize the transition from veterinary school to practice?
It's daunting. I found it to be scary at first. It's just amazing how we come out of vet school having seen so many cases and having learned from the best, only to realize that it feels like we know nothing. However, like anything, the more cases we see, the more experience we get. The seeds which were planted in school germinate, and it comes along. Positive and collaborative mentorship is key. I didn't have that, but I'd sure encourage students to keep that as a primary focus as they search for associate positions.
Right. And what were the major challenges you faced as a new veterinarian?
We didn't have technology then. So the feeling of not knowing where to start when I had a complicated case was daunting. Which book to look into to get answers quickly was extremely challenging. I don't know what this is like today with respect to accessing information. However, the feeling of being the doctor and decision maker and the weight of all that is still there. Next, I found it really hard to navigate the client's budgets or lack thereof. We don't always get to do the diagnostics or fancy treatments vet school cases utilize. And further, I think it seems once out into practice, there's no consistency or pathway to care. And practicing veterinarians can and do begin to cut corners, sadly. And finally, finding a practice with excellent culture can be very challenging. And probably like any business, it's the owner who and works diligently to maintain a positive and collaborative culture. My good friend and colleague, Dr. Rick DeBose at WSU College of Veterinary Medicine, was a brilliant pioneer in the study of practice leadership and culture over 20 years ago when he co-founded the VLE, Veterinary Leadership Experience. I really admire Dr. DeBose's work around how critical it is to build an astounding team dedicated to a very deliberately defined mission statement and shared values. This is not at all easy to find in our industry, and it takes hard and consistent work to build such an environment, but it's critical to the success of a practice. So I think for today's DVM, it comes down to carefully evaluating the culture of a practice to find the right fit. I never found it probably contributing to the reason I fled from clinical practice.
That is such an important point. I mean, I really want to draw attention to that. And I don't think that students looking to get into vet school or people in vet school or new graduates can appreciate how important that is until they get out. And I think a lot of us get out, and if we end up in a bad practice, one that has a negative or a toxic culture, we don't know that there's better out there. And so we stay. So,
you don't know till you don't know what you don't know.
Right. So maybe this will help those people to know, hey, if you're in a place that makes you unhappy, that's toxic, there are better places out there, and you just have to keep looking. And I'm glad to hear that, there are people in the industry who are working specifically on this issue, of trying to teach practices how to create positive cultures. So it makes a world of difference. I'm in a great practice now with a positive culture, and I just couldn't be happier. So did the realities of practice match your original vision? It sounds like not.
No, but back in the early 90s, I don't think the industry had really fully recognized how important building a collaborative and communicative team was. It was all about medicine back then, and the industry has come a long way. And there are so many great resources today to learn how to build a successful team.
So when and how did you meet your husband?
We've been on the internet. I was competing in Ironman triathlons in 2007 and explaining to a friend that the men I was meeting online were not at all athletes or fit and active as they had made themselves out to be. And I was also very successful in my building development career, and I just wasn't meeting anyone with similar work ethic. So she pointed out a brand new website all about fitness, and who would misrepresent himself on that site? So sure enough, Christian's profile was the very first one to pop up when I input my criteria. He's also a DVM and owned a mixed animal practice and as athletic as I was. And he was super cute too.
That's amazing. I met my husband online too. I remember when people were embarrassed about this, but it seems to be becoming more of the norm lately.
Yeah.
So after how many years of full-time practice did you begin working as a relief veterinarian?
6 months. So, once I remodeled that fixer-upper home and sold it 3 months later for twice my annual salary, I figured I was onto something. So I quit the job and bought my next fixer house and immediately started offering my services as a relief vet.
So is that what spurred you to work as a relief veterinarian?
Yeah, for sure. It fit really well with my entrepreneurial self. I could work on my homes, which eventually turned into becoming a general contractor and me running my own crews, building new speculative homes, and on my own time and when I wanted to. For years, I worked for the animal shelter in Seattle doing spays and neuters. And gosh, I love that. I'm a fierce entrepreneur and I like to set my own schedule. And this isn't the right fit for everyone, but it was for me.
So how did you end up in the construction industry?
The day I realized that I had very little money to fix up my first shabby little house, and I could either hire it out, quickly burning through what little I had left, or I could use the money to buy building materials, was that day. And it just evolved from there. Once I hit huge success and realized I could set my own schedule, I loved building homes. It was not an easy road. I was one of, if not the only, female builder in Seattle, and few subs took me seriously. Inspectors gave me a hard time and made my life hell, and real estate agents brought me the properties that none of their builder buddies wanted. I had to prove myself and face the hard realities. I scratched and scraped for years, and eventually my properties gained favor with buyers. They were better designed. And, for example, I learned the art of tiling, and I put custom tile on all surfaces instead of the typical linoleum or laminate, which is what set me apart from the other builders back then. I have many, many more crazy stories for another day. But in 1999, I thought, after watching my first episode of Survivor, the first reality TV show, really, how cool would it be to do a TV show about a female builder? I never did anything with it. Where would I be now, I wonder, had I found a good Hollywood connection?
Well, it's never too late. Don't rule it out yet. So how long were you in that industry? And I just want to confirm, you were working relief the entire time that you were doing construction. Yes. I have built roughly 100 new construction homes from 1998 to 2008, and I practiced as a relief vet the whole time. I built my husband's new practice building in 2009 and 10 before reinventing to the advisor again. That's amazing. And so what led you to become a financial advisor? Really personal financial tragedy, which I turned into personal conviction. I had 28 homes under construction, and I was running 6 crews in 2008 when the housing market crashed. Along the way, when I was successful and had built up a high net worth, I'd been taken advantage of by several greedy and unscrupulous financial advisors, unfortunately. So really hard lessons. But when it was all said and done, and I'd lost everything and I was on my knees, I just realized something good could come from this. I merged my veterinary knowledge with my business and financial knowledge to help my DVM colleagues financially. I figured out of my story of loss that I could help people to avoid many of the financial mistakes I myself had made, and that I could make a positive impact. Yeah, and I just want to go back to a conversation that you and I had offline previously, that you had built up an incredible net worth during that time. And you lost it all, didn't you? I did. I paid all of my banks back in full. I never missed a payment. I paid all of my subcontractors. I liquidated everything I had and paid everybody back. That was important to me. Yeah, and that goes a long way to speaking to your integrity. But what was your net worth before it all fell apart? Oh, I think it was in the neighborhood of about $10 million. $10 million. Started at zero, and I had saved and built it up to about $10 million. Mm-hmm. $10 million to nothing, and then starting all over. So I think that's that's another really important lesson for people to take away from your story. You could have $10 million and lose it all and still go on to have a great life. Yeah, that's true. Maybe it doesn't really belong to us. I was just a steward for a while. Yeah, we're just playing the game, and for a couple of hands you had to sit out because you lost everything, but now you're back. So, I'm okay. I'm alive and well. Yeah. So what kind of education or training was required to become a financial advisor? It's a great question. It really depends on how an advisor wants to practice. So I started on the insurance side, and that takes self-study and passing the state insurance course to become licensed.
And, that being said, it takes years to build up enough experience to be really good at it. And it is far, far more complex than people really realize. Just having a license doesn't make a good agent or advisor. But at that time, I felt stymied and I wanted to work more comprehensively. So I decided to work with investments and become a financial planner. I took courses and spent hundreds of hours studying for my series 63, 65, and 7, which is securities registrations. Once those exams are passed, an advisor can work on the recurring continuing education requirements to stay registered. Another way of gaining experience is to obtain designations. So many of your listeners might have heard of a CFP or Certified Financial Planner. I use that one because it's most commonly known, but there are many other designations. I just recently earned my RICP designation, which stands for Retirement Income Certified Professional. So this designation provides me with an understanding of how to effectively guide a client through the transition from their accumulation stage during their working years to their decumulation stage in retirement. The RICP knowledge base allows me to provide value by developing solid strategies to establish a sustainable income for a client's retirement years. Mm-hmm. So a designation could be analogous to becoming board certified in the veterinary industry. It's a choice for an advisor to work towards a designation.
Okay, I see. Thank you for explaining that. Now, sure. Why did you choose financial advising over practicing veterinary medicine?
I love both, but I love business and financial topics. And again, due to my own financial success and then subsequent losses, I felt a calling to help other DVMs. In this sense, I can try to make a positive impact on many practices and on many lives, even generationally, which I figured would make larger impacts on the industry and collaterally clients and their animals. Our financial lives and the content or discontent that people feel impacts their happiness and how they operate professionally and personally. Financial security is deeply important to everyone, and I've always believed from the time that I was very young that I was destined to make a really big impact somewhere. So despite the rocky road I've traveled to get here and the everyday challenges I face along with everyone else, I will persevere and strive to make this impact to our veterinary industry. I figured it would be a unique combination to be a DVM and a financial advisor. My practice has grown very significantly, so I'd be delighted if another DVM who has an interest in the financial industry would like to join me.
Okay, so there's a call out to any DVMs listening who think that they might want to leave practice and do something else. Mm-hmm. Get in touch with Darby. So what is your relationship to North Star Resource Group? Are you an independent contractor, and how does that work?
Yeah, I'm an independent contractor, not an employee to North Star Resource Group. And Securian Financial Services is North Star's broker-dealer. So North Star is based in Minneapolis and has origins tracing back to 1908. It's an independent firm, meaning we have no proprietary products or requirements, and the professionals at the firm offer a wide variety of products and services. I was with two other firms prior to North Star, which were really not at all a good fit for me. So in 2014, I moved my practice to North Star. I love the support that North Star offers me. My practice is set up and operates how I want it to be. So my inner entrepreneur is happy. And all this being said, April, the financial industry is very deeply regulated, which it should be. So North Star works extremely hard to keep all of their advisors compliant to make sound recommendations for our clients. And North Star also has a whole host of experts for their advisors to consult as needed. So I like to think of my practice like I'm a general DVM with expertise in certain areas, and I have boarded experts, standing at the ready when I need a consult. There are multiple sets of eyes on our advisors' recommendations. So we work as a team, and I think that's very valuable for clients.
Mm-hmm. Very nice analogy, I would say. So what advice would you offer a veterinarian who did want to follow in your footsteps?
To me, the most important thing to do for anybody is to start with the belief and the conviction that with steadfast dedication and hard work, we can achieve our goals. When I started in the construction industry, I was told it couldn't be done as a female. And next, when I got into the financial industry, despite starting off at 2 firms which really weren't a good fit, I just persevered and I found the right firm which fits my core values. It's important that an advisor work with a mentor, someone who has been in the industry for many years and has seen many cases, and just not unlike the veterinary industry. I think that grit is the basic ingredient that anyone will need when embarking on the journey to any big goal. It'll pay off with steadfast discipline and dedication. I have days like everybody else where I just want to fold up and give up, but pushing onward through the setbacks and triumphs sound cliche, but it's really the only way to reach the high bar.
So somebody who wanted to follow in your footsteps might be, they could contact you and perhaps you could be the mentor to them.
I would love that.
All right. So what are some of the biggest mistakes you've seen veterinarians or other doctors make regarding money management? And what are some of the most common misconceptions about money?
This is a great question, and it's a fairly long answer, if you don't mind. I'll use another vet metaphor again here. In the veterinary industry, I think it's not uncommon to run into folks from outside the industry who don't at all understand how vast and how complex veterinary medicine is. There's no way we could succinctly convey or sum up how hard vet school was or what kinds of conditions we can treat and how we treat them in a sentence or two, could we?
Nope.
Nope. And where would we even begin? When I decided to become an advisor, I was naive enough to make the same miscalculation. I thought, well, how hard can this industry be? I went to vet school after all. But I was so wrong. The financial industry is deeply complex and vast. And just like vet med, it takes years and years of study, cases, and experience to gain the wisdom and the knowledge necessary to become a really good and comprehensive advisor. So, we can practice along the way, just like a DVM does, but we gain deeper knowledge and the further we go. So I'm into this career now 10 years, and every single day I learn something new. An advisor cannot possibly be an expert at everything, nor can a DVM be boarded in every subject, right? Mm-hmm. And all this is to say that the biggest mistake DVMs make is trying to financially advise themselves. DVMs don't recommend to their clients that they use Dr. Google to diagnose and treat their animals, right? So now deep into this industry, I easily recognize that my own DIY mistakes from before I was an advisor.
DIY being do it yourself.
Yeah, really set me back. And now I recognize that my clients' mistakes, I recognize those same mistakes. And it's just so important to pay for professional help. In general, we don't do our own complicated accounting or taxes. We would never run our own lawsuits if someone were to sue us. We wouldn't engineer our own buildings. I could go on, but yet many DVMs try to run their own financial lives. And initially, I think this can be okay, but they get more complex. Tax laws change, economies change, products and strategies change, lives and the what ifs of what ifs complicate things, goals change, politics change, etc. So it's just too vast and complex not to consider hiring a professional. And, with respect to Google, sure, it's full of information, but it's devoid of wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And Google can never know you.
Mm-hmm.
The fear of having an advisor dispense bad advice or make bad recommendations is really valid. And I myself have been victimized. But risk is everywhere, financial risk. And the wisest thing a DVM could do is get a recommendation or find an advisor who you've researched and done your own due diligence on and build a relationship. There are truly wonderful advisors out there, and the cost of their fees should be taken into consideration compared to the efficiencies, the value, and the sense of security that they can bring to someone's financial life. The gamble in the do-it-yourself approach, or not seeking a second opinion, even if you have an advisor, is to risk losing years of hard work and savings. And to me, doing this to save a small fee just doesn't seem to be worth that risk. Mistakes can be costly and could mean extending working years far past one's goals, or living on a low fixed income, running out of money in retirement, and missing risk management strategies or legacy goals.
Mm-hmm. It's like being penny wise and pound foolish.
Yes.
So what are some of your biggest concerns for the field of veterinary medicine in terms of money?
So I spend my days unwinding years of financial mistakes and missteps that DVMs have or haven't taken. People put things off. I'm an example of someone who didn't have good advice, and I lost it all as a result. I had all of my assets, everything I owned, in one holding, which was real estate. And, it breaks my heart to learn about a disability or a premature death, which crushes a family financially, when that could have been prevented or handled with proper risk management. My own husband, April, is another example. His first wife died tragically in a rock climbing accident, and she didn't have enough life insurance in place, though she was insurable. And so Christian was left grieving, raising 2 little kids, trying to run his busy practice. And now we're faced with rebuilding my 2008 losses, plus pay for college for 2 kids.
Wow.
She was likely insurable and could have left enough behind to pay for college and allow him to grieve and not worry about money. So, next, to me, it's terrible to have to tell someone in his or her 60s that they can't retire until they're well into their 70s. Heartbreaking. And I literally lay awake at night, just worried about my clients and colleagues, from students with massive debt, feeling like they don't know who to turn to, all the way to practice owners or clients who've had a bad advisor, or an advisor even asleep at the wheel, or no advisor. So, today I lecture at multiple vet schools, and then I offer a complimentary, no obligation, one-on-one hour of consultation right at graduation, so that I can help people get started in the right financial direction. But April, I'm not enough. It's just me. And every spring I just drown in this pro bono work. The students are absolutely starved for help and advice. Our schools send them out the doors with this massive amount of debt, and new grads often don't understand which loan repayment program is the right one for them. And there's just little or no personalized advice on budgeting, or where, when, why, or how to start saving for retirement, or how to juggle multiple financial goals all at once, and little to no education on all of their insurance options. It's really a shame. And my personal belief is that 4 hours of lecture on personal finance during vet school is not enough. People need individual and customized help designing a personal financial strategy. And everybody's financial situation is unique as their own DNA. And, to carry on, this is really important, I think, for your listeners. I worry about the severely high stress levels in our industry over money.
Me too.
I mean, for goodness sakes, there is help out there. And DVMs can live with debt, manage their money and debt, juggle other financial goals, and still live into a truly wonderful and rewarding career. It's not as easy and it's not over quickly, but it can be done. And I see examples of it every day. The veterinary industry must offer more vetted and viable, trusted and consistent financial resources. And students need help understanding how critical paying attention to their financial lives really is. It's just a mess out there. Mm-hmm. Students need to seek more help when it's made available to them. Many will bury their heads in the sand and simply don't reach out for that help. I wish that I could personally reach, educate, and help more people. So all that seriousness aside, there's bright news. I have 2 schools which have opened their doors to my complimentary, no obligation exit interviews, and they're doing what they can to give students access to this help. I'm really proud of the stand these schools are taking. And next, I've been contacted by several corporations to ask how they can bring more financial education and help to their associates. So I just love this. I think it would be so great to build a team of DVM financial advisors to help me offer these complimentary exit interviews at every single vet school, so that every new graduate has an opportunity to sit one-on-one with an advisor who cares and offers a resource for them as they matriculate into their busy careers and life gets more complex financially. It's a lofty goal, isn't it? But I'm not going to stop persevering.
Yeah, that's amazing. And, just hearing you talk about that, I don't think that even I appreciated until talking with you, the meaning of having a financial plan. Like it's not about your budget today. I remember having a lecture on budgeting in vet school, it's going to be this much for gas every month, this much for a car payment, this much for insurance, etc. But that's just today. And what you're talking about is creating a plan for tomorrow. That's the important part. That's the part we need help with.
Pulling everything together.
Yeah.
Do you see it any differently than building a treatment plan?
Well, it's a little bit more long-term, I guess. If you're a GP, then that's the kind of guidance that you're offering your pet owning clients. But do you believe that money problems play a role in the high levels of depression and suicide reported in the field of veterinary medicine?
Yeah, no question. It just makes my hair stand up. I believe it plays some role, but especially now with the incredibly high cost of vet school, it's just devastatingly sad. And, obviously financial stress is just one reason why DVMs might consider suicide. It's not the only reason. But DVMs need to know that if they're stressed over their financial lives, there is help available. And, this might come as a surprise to some of your listeners, but in my years in this financial industry and in my work with hundreds of DVMs in all career stages, it's not the student debt which will crush people financially. It's usually their financial habits. So not everybody, of course. I recognize that so many people are very frugal and still struggle with debt. However, the majority of people do not have a financial road mapped out for themselves. And so many people, not just DVMs, of course, but they spend blindly and they don't save. And this can lead to fear and depression and could ruin a brilliant career and life. key is just to get help and follow that advice. Not unlike the advice DVMs themselves dispense to their own clients. We just can't ignore that debt is a major problem and that it can be a really long and stressful road to get rid of it. So I'm really not minimizing this at all. I'm simply saying that in so many cases, there's good help, and we can build efficient strategies and practice good habits to manage it whilst enjoying life along the way. I have several hundred clients managing their debt, sometimes very big debt, but we made a strategy for them. They're more relaxed and they're living their lives while paying it down. So often it's a matter of choice. So in the end, I guess I would say, whatever is causing you stress, whether it's financial matters or something else, seek out the help of a professional in that area. It truly can make all the difference.
This is really amazing. You're opening my eyes to something that I really hadn't thought of before. But, going back to that budget that we're asked to put together, and it's so uninspiring. Oh, I spend this much on clothes and this much on my smartphone. And it's really hard to stick to day by day and month by month when it's just like, oh, I only have this much to spend on coffee every month. But if you put it into the perspective of a financial plan, so working with a financial planner, I think you have a better idea that you're doing this, you're making these sacrifices now so that you can have the vision of your future that you want.
I love that. I heard an advisor say to me once, saving is just delayed spending. And a budget is key. And while it's a pain in the neck to make it, I come at things a little bit differently. I tell clients, first save. So first remove funds from your banking account, say that hit after being paid, and save those. So set up a savings plan first, then spend the rest. And I wrote an article called Pay Your Future Self First. Mm-hmm. So I'm happy to share that with your listeners.
Yeah, that would be great. I'd appreciate it. I'll post a link on the show notes. But so that's it. Like working with a financial advisor is somebody who helps you to articulate what your financial goals are for the future. What kind of lifestyle do you want to have in your future? And then you have that vision and somebody to help you along the way to achieve that vision. And that probably takes a lot of the drudgery out of the daily budget because you can remember your vision and that keeps you in line.
Yeah, I love that comment because the way that I build plans is it all starts with the goals. Mm-hmm. What do you want? Yeah. What do you want your life to look like? Yeah. What do you want to try to achieve? What's important to you? I always tell my clients, I'm going to hand you a little magic wand now. It's not magic, but I'm going to hand you something and I want you to tell me, what do you want? What's important to you? Mm-hmm. And what are your values and where you want to go? And then we try to work backwards to today to try to reach that. And that's how the plans start. It's all about the goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So thank you for helping me to understand that. That's really, really important. So,
I want to make sure for compliance reasons that I say I don't have a magic wand. And I was being silly. There's no such thing as a magic wand. But it's sort of a dream session.
Right.
What's important to you?
I understand. It's a metaphor. Darby Affeldt does not give out magic wands, nor does she have one.
I would.
So since you lecture at some veterinary colleges, what's your general impression of the level of financial literacy among veterinary students? Does it concern you that some people want to be a veterinarian so badly that they literally don't care how much it costs?
Yes. The literacy varies so widely. For the past 4 years, I've had a link to my online calendar that I freely hand out each spring to new graduates to help counsel them. And in addition to my in-person meetings at a few schools. So I talk with students from many colleges. This year, I talked to over 157 new DVMs from 9 different colleges. And It always amazes me the noticeable literacy trends that I see. Students from some schools are largely on top of their finances. Others have never even heard of some of the basic concepts. And they tell me they were even never offered even one course. So I believe the colleges must really work to implement more, better, and consistent resources. And yet, that's not the whole story either, right? So many colleges are well aware and are trying to bring in coursework, yet their students either don't want it, don't appreciate it, don't take advantage of it if it's an elective, or they complain if it's not pertinent to them, if they feel it's not pertinent, if it's mandatory. So this is a really tough endeavor. Yet I firmly believe as educators that we should consider beginning with the students from their very first year and helping them to understand that their financial literacy and the decisions today may very well color their entire career. So offering case studies and real examples of how learning the principles of personal and practice financial stewardship could very well be how they get out of their own debt more efficiently. They can enjoy a career with less financial stress, and ultimately could help them lead to a happier, more fulfilled life. So, I guess I feel deeply concerned that many students don't care how much the education costs, but it's really not surprising, right? So that's something that many don't feel the impact of until it's time to repay it. And I think for many students, it's not even real yet. Perhaps they went from high school to college and college to vet school, and they just haven't felt the burden that their debt will become until it must be faced. And, it's kind of the old head in the sand phenomenon. Or it's even as simple as this. Here's an analogy. I love analogies. It's impossible to know what chocolate tastes like until we taste chocolate. So then there's always the bell curve. So there's students who are so fearful of their debt, they develop horrible anxiety, which is just so crippling to deal with. And I have clients in all career stages, and again, this may come as a surprise, but my clients don't seem to be obsessing about their debt 2, 3, 4 years plus into practice. And I'm not saying that it's not a topic, but I'm just saying it becomes background noise. And why is this? It's because they're financially educated. We're managing it. We have built strategies around it. We have constructed personalized budgets that they can live with, and that includes fund money. So we juggle saving for retirement, perhaps tax for loan forgiveness, college for their own children, saving for a house, et cetera. And they have my help and guidance. So down the road, when it's time, we'll build a formal financial plan together, and they can see what their current trajectory is, and they can see what their retirement will be, that their retirement will really be okay and maybe even highly successful. So, April, in other words, knowledge and education are keys to this process, and humans are highly adaptable. So the advisor, isn't always the end all be all, but just like our veterinary clients fearing for their sick or injured animals, they come for advice from their trusted DVM who has the training and the knowledge and the answers to help solve many problems. So, in the end, I just believe that a competent and caring advisor can make a world of difference.
Yeah. Well, I've heard of one veterinarian with student loan debt in the ballpark of $750,000 US dollars.
Wow.
So
Wow.
obviously, despite student loan debt being a huge problem for veterinarians these days, that number's far above the average, which I think is about 160,000. So I know you can't give specific advice in this venue, but I just wonder, do you even think the best financial planner would be able to help a veterinarian making the average starting salary of about $75,000 a year if they had $750,000 in student loan debt?
Wow. I that is the most I've ever heard of. before today, I've heard of 499,000, and I thought that was outstanding, outrageous. But veterinary school shouldn't cost that much. I mean, it's hard to know why that person got in that amount of debt. Vet school costs range widely, obviously, depending on where one goes to school, in state or out of state, or in the States or out of the States, or how much is carried over from undergraduate debt, etc. I've seen it ranging obviously from $0 to $499. I think the average is around $150,000 to $200,000. And right, so as of December 2018, the government says that it will forgive any remaining debt after 10, 20, or 25 years, depending on the loan repayment program, of course. And it's saying that tax will be owing on any loan amounts forgiven for programs outside of public service loan forgiveness. So it'll be like income that year. So this is all that we have to go on. And it's impossible to know if this is accurate, if it will still be available, or if those already promised this loan forgiveness will be grandfathered in, if and when forgiveness is taken away. But the best I can say is that we work with what we know. Nobody knows the future. We plan for what we know. We plan as best as we can for the what ifs or the unknowns. So, I meet with so many people who have so many unique situations. It's just entirely impossible to suggest that what will work for one individual will work for everyone across the board. I mean, it would be analogous to suggesting that as veterinarians, you don't really need to do individual diagnostic tests when we suspect a specific disease, that we could just write up the same treatment plan or script out medication that has worked before. That's silly. Everyone's unique. And while certain strategies might share certain themes, no two situations are alike or ever identical, ever. So there's literally no advice that will apply to everyone across the board. But a really good financial planner could help DVMs who are willing to follow the advice to manage their financial life with a far better outcome than a busy DVM could likely manage on their own. So a DVM without formal financial training just likely wouldn't know more about products and strategies than a properly trained advisor. It's just more complex and meets the eye.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that the DVM degree is a good investment? Or phrased another way, how could someone make the DVM degree into a good investment? Is practice ownership the most sensible way out of student loan debt?
I have so many clients, from associates to practice owners, who have made their careers very successful. And an associate can make this career work financially. I know of one new grad whom I met with when he was graduating, paid off $150,000 of student debt in 3 years. And I said he because I'm thinking of a separate client, but this client is a she. She sent pictures of herself throwing her paid loan paperwork into the air. How wonderful. So how? So to be fair, she was married and had a dual income. So, not a huge dual income, mind you, but they lived only slightly better than in vet school, like a step up from top ramen. So from a lifestyle perspective, and they lived on his income, which again was less than hers. So they just used her entire income to pay down her loans aggressively. And, I have a second example. There's many examples, but this won't be the case for everyone, but the point of the story is that making lifestyle sacrifices early on and paying down debt aggressively can pay off in the long run. So I have another client whose base salary was $70,000 when he started in June after graduation. And in 1 year, his annualized income was $150,000 just in his first year. And, how? Well, he took a practice management course in vet school and saw firsthand what making consistent and competent recommendations would do for his production. And so these are two associate examples. And on the other hand, I've seen many DVMs who purchased or started up a practice. They did proper and thorough research and build extremely profitable practices. And this can be a very fast way out of debt if one is diligent about debt reduction. It takes an immense amount of TLC to build such a practice, as we've discussed. And there are scores of good resources and professionals out there to help. So in my experience with DVMs, I just don't recommend that someone haphazardly run a practice on the notion that good medicine alone will work. It just can be a disaster. Many are successful despite themselves, I would say. Mm-hmm. But there's just so much more to say here. But this is a fantastic career that one can make work financially, whether as an associate or a practice owner. And for those DVMs who are not in private practice, diligent financial strategies can also be employed to enjoy a successful career financially.
Well, another financial concern of many in the field is that veterinary support staff, even licensed veterinary technicians, are often not paid enough to be able to support themselves or their families without help from a spouse or other family members. I can't imagine how people in that position would be able to plan for a comfortable retirement. I mean, do you think a financial planner could help an LVT making $15 an hour? Could someone on an LVT salary afford a financial planner?
Yeah, this is a really tough subject and a situation. In my opinion, I don't believe support staff are paid enough. And just as I don't think DVM associates are paid enough. There's exceptions, of course, but it's hard for anybody in any occupation making $15 an hour to live and save for retirement. It takes immense amount of discipline and living well below one's means just to save for retirement goals. An LVT with some financial education and good financial habits could absolutely get to the place of being able to pay for financial advice, though admittedly it's going to be harder. I don't think it's any, much different from a veterinary client making $15 an hour, not having enough money to pay for their pet care, though. It's just tough to hire professionals at that level, isn't it?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think that in a previous conversation, you and we were also talking about the hope that with greater financial education and guidance, more practices can be more successful, and they can maybe afford to pay their support staff better as well as their veterinary associates. And so, maybe just by bringing up the entire industry, that can be one way to solve that problem.
I agree.
So I personally get pretty confused about all the different types of financial help that may be available. There are CPAs and CFPs, there's tax consultants and financial planners and financial advisors, brokers and fiduciaries and money managers, etc. So could you please explain the difference between some of the most common types of financial expertise people might seek and under what circumstances each might be appropriate?
Yeah, you bet. This is a really great question, and it's a fairly long answer. So hopefully this will provide some nice context for everybody there. There is confusion out there, and it's for good reason. It's complex, and there's very little continuity with respect to what advisors call themselves. So further adding to that confusion. I think the financial industry has done a very poor job of helping the public to understand what it is that we do. And of course, there are bad seeds out there who get a lot of press and further confuse or even scare the public. So as mentioned earlier, there's many different types of licenses out there. So what one advisor or planner holds can vary. And as much regulation that is in our industry, you'd think it would be like a food label where the ingredients are clearly outlined.
Mm-hmm.
They're just not. In general, every firm is different in how they title their professionals. A financial planner or advisor could mean that they offer advice for a fee and can build formal financial plans, and they may manage assets or investments. On the other hand, some professionals only manage assets and do not build plans at all. I meet many people who have had someone managing their assets, but they don't have a formal planning relationship. So they're not even sure if they're on track to reach their retirement goals. So that's why it's really important to ask questions of your financial professional. You should understand what capacity they're doing business in and what products and services you are purchasing. So let's try to break this down. An advisor who handles investments can charge in a couple of different ways. So they could charge a commission when they manage or sell or place trades into investments, and that's called a brokerage account. Or they could charge a flat annual percent, typically on a declining basis, but not always, and based on the amount of assets they're managing for a client. So at our firm, this is called an investment advisory account. I find that most investors find it difficult to understand how they're being charged. But it's really important to learn this. And a good advisor will explain it in terms that clients can understand. He or she will be transparent and re-educate their clients if they've forgotten as needed. So now here I want to make a very important distinction since it's confusing. There's a big distinction between an asset manager and a financial planner. And sometimes both of these professionals are called financial advisors. Okay, so the asset manager manages assets. He or she may offer financial planning. Conversely, the financial planner, or sometimes called financial advisor, offers formal planning services, and they may or may not offer asset management services. Okay, so the terminology just really isn't clear cut. I once met a DVM closing in on retirement, and he had someone managing his IRA, but the advisor either didn't offer or didn't perform planning services. So as it turned out, when we looked at his situation, I immediately recognized that he was not saving enough and was not at all on track to reach his retirement goals. He had no idea. His comment to me was, I thought the other advisor was doing all of this for me. So this isn't necessarily true. So if an advisor doesn't offer or do formal planning or hasn't suggested to a client that they might consider a more formal planning arrangement, a huge gap could be present. So in this case, the only service the DVM was paying for that the advisor was doing was to manage his assets. And he was on track to run out of money in retirement. So to be clear, asset management and formal planning are very two different services. So I just want to say this very emphatically. Instead of worrying about terminology, since it's really inconsistent, it's just best to simply ask your financial professional which services they offer. Okay? So it's worth having a second advisor put another set of eyes on how your investments are being handled and to understand if you need a more formal financial planning relationship to be sure you are on track to those goals that we discussed, and or to be sure that your advisor is doing his or her job well. All plans are not equal and all investment management styles are not equal. So ask. So there's a little bit more to say here too. So, with respect to how services work, an advisor could be fee only, where they may not help clients to purchase any products from the insurance carriers to make a commission, right? But they will recommend someone go seek products if that's a need. They're essentially being paid to give advice. Or they could provide both advice for a fee and earn a commission by selling products that they recommend. So many people believe that there's a conflict of interest here. And while that can be very true, a financial advisor should be acting in the client's best interests when providing investment advisory services for a fee. And this is called a fiduciary. And an analogy to this could be made within our own industry. So, here's an example. Not that I'm saying that financial advisory clients are dogs or that they're sick. So let's set that example aside. But I think it's a great way to wrap our heads around this. Take a DVM on production, seeing a large breed dog with dermatitis, for example. So, the vet could recommend only Convenia to the client since they'd get paid more on commission on production, right? Or they could educate the client on all of the options. And, further say that the dog would eat, say cephalexin, like a dog treat, like my own dog Lava, meaning the dog was easy to pill. So if a client could save a significant amount of money and put up with the minor hassle of handing the dog a cephalexin pill to gobble up, BID or TID, but achieve the same result, it would be the right thing to do to line out those options in the right context with all of the pertinent facts included, and then let the client decide, right? And yet the conflict of interest could and does exist, and the DVM could mention only the convenient, or they could persuasively downplay another treatment in the interest of making more money. So, this conflict of interest happens, April, in many industries, right? And it's unfortunate. But the financial industry seems to get a lot of press. And a tech told me recently that she saw her practice owner charge a client for an ACL repair. He literally cut open the knee, closed it right back up, doing nothing, and told the client that it doesn't always work. We've got the dog in the background. I have the neighbor showing up. This is horrible. My commentary to all of this is that there's bad seeds everywhere. And that's why it's important to do your research as a consumer and ask and understand what capacity your advisor is working in, what you're paying for. And then finally, someone could hold only insurance licenses and not give advice or place securities trades or manage assets at all. So this would be an insurance agent. Now, let's dive back into fiduciary, because we see it a lot in the news, right? The fiduciary is vitally important. The fiduciary's role and the obligation is to put the client's needs before their own, which is regulated under the Investment Advisor Act of 1940. We talked earlier about designations with CFPs, HFC, RICP, CFA, on and on and on. There's many. So those are obtained by choice and can be truly helpful to deepen knowledge. And however, the presence or absence of a designation doesn't mean a good or a bad or a worse advisor, better or worse. A person should not choose to work with a financial professional solely based on the letters following their name. I know many advisors who don't hold any designations who do very brilliant and careful work, and they consult experts to ensure they're doing it well, and everything in between. So I think the same could be true in the veterinary industry. Again, the board certified DVM will possess much more knowledge and further education than a general DVM, but this doesn't mean that the general DVM is not a brilliant practitioner or that the board certified DVM is a brilliant practitioner. So I hope this is helpful. The last little section here is that financial professionals can work transactionally too. So for example, let's say make a recommendation for a product or an investment. Help a client to access that, and that's it. This can be appropriate for younger clients needing insurance, for example, or to start a small retirement account, for example, or someone with good planning already intact but needing one or two products to round out their plan. And in the end, the very best way to find an advisor is to ask someone for a referral if possible, and just do research into the advisor's background. And next, interview and ask an advisor how he or she works, what services they offer, how their fees are charged, and what their philosophies are. So they need to be transparent. They should not make any grandiose promises. And most importantly, clients should feel that they could build a long-term and trusted relationship with their advisor, not unlike a DVM client relationship. And again, no advisor or DVM knows everything. And it's not always about how smart or technical they sound or speak. Much of it is just trusting your gut. A good advisor will seek answers and expert help when they come across more complex situations. And there's so many parallels to the veterinary industry here. I love this.
Mm-hmm. Well, can you give some general advice about red flags to look out for when seeking financial advice?
Mm-hmm. I can, and I'd shy away from any professional who made unrealistic promises. Like, I could always get this return on your investments. For example, that's silly. Nobody can predict the future, and past performance does not predict future results. Even Warren Buffett knows this. So an advisor who is not engaged and doesn't appear as if they truly care is a caution, or one who's immediately trying to push or sell a product without fully working through a careful analysis of the situation is a red flag. A lack of transparency about their fee structure or how they paid is a big concern. If a client has paid an advisor a fee but hasn't heard from him or her at least annually, that's a concern. It's not always necessary that the advisor is continually in contact. This might be the case, for example, if a client has not paid a fee for ongoing advice, as in the example of the transactional relationship that I talked about before, or even like a brokerage account discussed earlier. So in these cases, the advisor was paid a commission for their expertise and advice at the time or on the product, but not for an ongoing fee. So, the DVM or the lawyer or even accountant doesn't constantly reach back out to all clients who might have come in for one or two services in the past, as an example. But the red flag here is that if you are paying for a fee-based service, that advisor is under obligation to have at least one annual meeting. And if you haven't heard from him or her, or you don't even like him or her, I'd say look for another relationship. I think also worth listening here mentioning for your listeners is please have your investments and or past planning and insurances reviewed by a new set of eyes. We don't know what we don't know. And perhaps an advisor is managing assets only in the example I shared with before, but the client feels they're still not on track to reach their goals, or they're just not even sure. So this client might consider finding a new advisor who can offer to build a formal plan if the client desires it. Overall, the financial planning process provides analysis of what the entire financial picture can provide insight on how to reach goals.
So if a veterinarian were to hire you as their financial advisor, what should that veterinarian expect in terms of the process of collaborating to develop a financial plan?
I like this question. It's good. My financial planning process, my personal one, is very comprehensive. So I start by spending a lot of time, complimentary and without obligation, to meet with a client, often by phone, or if they're local in person, to learn about them and to understand what they're hoping to accomplish, right? Those goals. And sometimes people aren't ready for a formal plan, and other times they truly are. It just really depends where they are. I look at where things are, currently, like income and debt and taxation, although I'm not an accountant. I do a lot of work with taxation, though I'm not a CPA. Spending assets, savings, goals, both large and small. I look at their time horizon, their fears, their concerns, their risk tolerances, all of their insurances. I look at cash flow, practice ownership, spouses, partners, kids, family, etc. We spend a lot of time to be sure that I understand them. And I ask a lot of questions to learn what's most important to a client and to share about how my practice works. So, going over mutual expectations. So if a formal plan is warranted, we just go through what my fee would be, which, like vet med, all depends on how much work I will need to put into it and the complexity of the situation. I gather all the documents in that case that I'm going to be doing a formal plan, and then spend some time understanding the data, the facts, the fact patterns, the investments, the insurances, the assets. Most planners today are using planning software. So once the data is input and verified with my clients, we work again to discuss short, medium, and long-term goals. Here's where I build the plan. And I build hypothetical scenarios based on their personal goals to help them see what their future could look like. So I build in assumptions about life and retirement and death and investment growth and inflation and all the what ifs. And I design what is and what isn't realistic and what's achievable or not. So we work back to today so that I can show a client what they need to be doing to reach their goals tomorrow. And if they're not on track, we build a workable plan to get them on track. Or sometimes clients see that they're better off than they thought. They were worried and they're fine. So if someone's unsure if they can buy a practice or a home, or what size home, or how to pay for college, we can explore how those would affect their plan and if they're realistic. And then once we build that plan and they're happy with it, I'll make recommendations. And implementing those recommendations is a decision that the client would make. And the cost of purchasing products is a separate cost. So I'll give you an example. A recommendation might be risk management strategy, or otherwise known as insurances, or begin investing, or invest, or save more, or move existing investments, or move or change certain products that may or may not be serving anymore, or start saving, or pay down debt in a certain order. So those are just examples. And we just determine if they can retire early or if they got to work longer. Or we might analyze Social Security claiming strategies, fund a trust, or I may recommend that they go get wills. Everybody's unique, and no two plans are alike ever. And so from there, we monitor the plan, and I stay very engaged, and my planning fee is an annual fee. So it comes with this process and with this plan, and there's often multiple meetings and access to me, and as situations or questions come up. So it's collaborative and it's dynamic.
So that veterinarian would be able to call on you for random financial advice, say about the wording in an employment contract, about pro-sale?
Yeah, for people who aren't sure if they need my advice or not, I'm always happy to share a complimentary no obligation call to learn if and how I can help them. But a client who's paying me a fee for advice can sure call me. It's included in my fee. And if I don't know the answer, or if I'm prohibited from giving advice in that particular arena, like it's outside my realm of licensure or experience, like what you mentioned, a formal contract review or tax advice, as an example, I'll help find them the right professional. So financial advisors do not provide tax or legal advice. But a question about employment contracts would need to be answered by a licensed attorney. So in my career, I've worked really, really hard to find referrals in the industry who do great work, reasonably priced, and who my clients can have had good success with. My fee clients are always welcome to call me for random financial advice. And I do devote, again, 400 hours annually on complimentary, no obligation basis to a new graduate or somebody who wonders if I might be a fit for them. So it's my way of giving back to the profession.
And is there any specific advice that you'd like to offer future veterinarians based on your own experiences?
Yeah, I think, yes. Please seek please seek an advisor just earlier than what you think you will need. Professional advice can go such a long, long way to building financial efficiency. I've said this several times because it's important. Strongly consider getting a second set of eyes on your financial situation. It's never a bad idea to make sure that your advisor is truly your champion. And just because it's so complex, and it's possible that there are planning opportunities that have not been addressed. And the same advice would go for a DVM who has done their own financial planning. We discussed Google earlier. It's really important to seek professional advice, and time can either be the ally or the foe to a successful financial outcome.
Mm-hmm. And how can people find out more about you or get in touch with you?
I can be reached through the North Star Resource Group website. There's a Find an Advisor section in there, or my LinkedIn profile. And my email is darby.affeldt@northstarfinancial.com.
And just wrapping up here, Darby, do you have a favorite charity you'd like to mention that listeners can consider making a donation to if they'd like to thank you for your generous time and advice?
Oh, I do. And it's such a good time of year to give, right? So years ago, I started a little spay and neuter service for cats at the Lewis County Animal Shelter in Centralia, Washington. And since they were euthanizing over 1,100 cats a year. So we got that number down to 700, and it's still horrific, but we made a really big impact in just 1 year. So I just love that little shelter, and they have so few resources and, like thousands of shelters. But my good friend Amy Hansen, who runs the shelter, she's a hero. She's a hero of mine. I don't know if I've ever met a more selfless, humble, or hardworking person doing the unthinkable every day. So I'm proud of Amy and her staff and all that they do for the forgotten animals of Lewis County. So I would sure be delighted if someone donated whatever they can afford to the shelter. And thank you so much for asking this. It means the world to me.
Well, thank you for being on the program. And I've certainly learned a lot. And I feel like I've got a more mature perspective of financial planning and the benefits that it brings to one's life. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I've been honored that you asked, and I hope that it's been helpful and comprehensive for your listeners.
Absolutely. All right. You take care.
Thank you.
Financial advisors do not provide tax or legal advice. Please consult a tax or legal professional for tax or legal advice regarding your specific situation. Separate from the financial plan and their role as financial planners, they may recommend the purchase of specific investments or insurance products or accounts. These product recommendations are not a part of the financial plan, and you are under no obligation to follow them. North Star Resource Group, 313 North 55th Street, Seattle, Washington, 98103. Darby is a registered representative and investment advisor representative of CRI Securities, LLC, and Securian Financial Services, Inc. North Star Resource Group offers securities and investments through CRI Securities, LLC, and Securian Financial Services, Inc. Members, FINRA, SIPC. CRI Securities, LLC is affiliated with Securian Financial Services, Inc. and North Star Resource Group. North Star Resource Group is not affiliated with Securian Financial Services, Inc. North Star Resource Group is independently owned and operated. I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you found it helpful, please take a moment to leave a positive review of the Voices of Veterinary Medicine podcast and share this episode with anyone else who may also benefit. And whatever your current interest in veterinary medicine is, and wherever you are on your journey right now, I wish you a magnificent future. Content disclaimer. The opinions expressed in this podcast are those of host or guest alone and do not reflect those of respective employers or other affiliations. Unless otherwise stated, podcast guests and hosts claim no professional training or education in psychiatry, psychology, human nutrition, exercise, physiology, financial or legal matters, human medicine, or medical education. Please consult a certified or licensed expert in these areas for professional help. Any advice on veterinary medical practice provided by the author or guests is intended only for application by licensed veterinarians capable of using their own medical judgment. Nothing in this podcast implies or intends to establish a doctor-client-patient relationship, and any information provided about pet care is for entertainment purposes only. For medical advice pertaining to your pets, consult a licensed veterinarian in your area. In no event should the host or guest be responsible or liable, directly or indirectly, for any damage or loss caused or alleged to be caused by or in connection with the use of or reliance on any information provided in these podcasts. It is the listener's responsibility to research the accuracy, completeness, and usefulness of all opinions and other information provided by the hosts and guests of the Voices of Veterinary Medicine podcast.